I have played a lot of sports games over the years, as far back as Blades of Steel on the NES and as recent as College Football 25 and 26. I've dove into pretty much all of the major sports franchises at some point in recent years, and I must say, these games have become too much of a grind. Yeah, you can play by yourself and bring the Supersonics back to Seattle in a 2K franchise, but the developers' focus for these games in terms of making them different from the previous year is put toward the My Player experience where you start out as a shoeless Calvin Cambridge and have to pay or grind daily to be able to hoop like Air Bud. And then even more focus is put toward the card-based My Team experience, where you start out as Weevil Underwood and have to play daily to be able to duel like Maximilian Pegasus. Moral of the story, sports games are now a grind to get the best experience out of the games. They lack that pick up and play enjoyment that games used to have. Even if you just want to play a quick game, you have to learn every player's animations in 2K, you have to learn every player's shot and which foot is their strong foot in FIFA or EAFC, and you have to slow down space and time to be able to hit a ball in MLB The Show where even if you get perfect contact, it can go right into a fielder's glove. This reality has had me reminiscing on how thousands of sports games have been released since the dawn of gaming, going as far back as 1958 with Tennis for Two, which looks like it would be played in a submarine. The fun factor of these games grew over time. The third console generation had standout titles on the NES with Tecmo Super Bowl and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Also, while doing research for this video, I got hit with the most unexpected nostalgia when being reminded that Base Wars exists. This is a baseball game where you play as robots and can fistfight each other. I played this game a ton growing up, and honestly don't remember the baseball gameplay being super fun, but the concept sure is. I probably just sucked at the game, to be honest, but let me know if you also have fond memories of moving your tank treads around the batter's box. The Super Nintendo kept the train rolling in the fourth console generation, and had two of my favorite sports games of all time, in Super Punch-Out! And NBA Jam Tournament Edition.
He's heating up!
For the fifth console generation, I'll admit I did not play many sports games. If you count Tony Hawk Pro Skater, Mario Kart, and Tekken 3, I could talk Yoshimitsu all day. But those are not sports games as far as I'm concerned. But then we have the golden era, where we are going to park the time machine, the sixth console generation. The GameCube had absolute shooters with its lineup of Mario sports games. Super Mario Strikers and Mario Superstar Baseball in particular being another two of my favorite sports games. I give Nintendo credit for keeping the fun spirit alive and continuing to make Mario sports games, so I'm not here to talk about the GameCube. I'm here to talk about sports games on the PlayStation 2 and the lack of their spirit in the modern landscape. The kings of this conversation are Midway and Electronic Arts. Nowadays, you're better off saying you love Hitler than saying anything positive about EA on the internet, but in the early 2000s, EA was cooking. Back then, there was the EA Sports big division of EA, who was willing to experiment and make unique titles that were simply meant to be fun. Their largest series that people still clamor for to this day was the Street series. FIFA Street was a compact, fast-paced version of soccer that rewarded skill expression, and you can't end a match in a tie. NFL Street was a showboating, wall-jumping 7v7 football game that removed all of the lame stuff from the sport, like penalties and kicking extra points. It also includes some of the most insane loading screen art I've ever seen, which in this case is from NFL Street 2. And the GOAT, NBA Street, was the second coming of NBA Jam, high-flying 3v3 basketball, but with more style and personality than its predecessor. These games you could just pick up and play without a microtransaction in sight. They were designed to be fun as they leaned into the arcade experience. You need to swing momentum your way, activate a game breaker, and take points away from your opponent. Penalty flags? Never heard of them. Free throws? Ain't nobody got time for that. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander probably sucks at NBA Street. To be fair, the major modern sports titles have made attempts at bringing these style of games back. The last FIFA or EAFC I played had a futsal mode called Volta, but it felt half-baked. It could only be played online as far as I can tell, and in my experience fell victim to people's My Players being demons compared to an employed person like myself. Madden has the more arcadey Superstar KO mode, which I think was a welcome addition, but did not have lasting power for me personally, and I can't even go back to record footage since the servers are no longer active in the last Madden I bought, which is Madden 20. And I would rather hire Carlos Boozer's barber than ever enter the park in 2K again, which is akin to NBA Street being 3v3 basketball in a park setting, but is a pay-to-win cesspool filled with people who have every player maxed out to a meta build that they saw on TikTok so they can hit every three from half court or dunk no matter what. At least that's how it was when I played, and I couldn't tell you if it's any different because the servers in the last 2K I bought, 2K21, also seem to have been shut down. This makes sense, I suppose. I doubt anyone's still playing this game, but I can't even play with the My Player I spent hours building up, or use any of the player cards I spent even more hours getting in my team. So if I want to casually play sports games and not buy the game that barely changes every year, you're telling me they can Thanos snap away all of the hours of my precious time I put into it, even though I spent my hard-earned money on it? Not to mention, the Xbox Store is still selling 5-year-old sports games like MLB The Show 21, which has no server support and therefore a fraction of the experience. Yet, it is still listed for $70+. Yeah, modern sports games suck. As I digress from that tangent, I should mention you can play 2K Blacktop offline in 3v3 or whatever V you like, but there's really nothing to it and it quickly becomes stale. These game modes I just mentioned obviously lean into online play. Even with active servers, they alienate casual players who don't have the time to grind or don't feel like paying extra money to improve their players. This again points to the lack of focus on pick up and play capability. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who shy away from the online modes and just play their offline franchises. And if you enjoy that, I'm happy for you. But my issue with these games, even on their offline base level, is their commitment to realism. Maybe I shouldn't call it an issue since that's what they're going for, it's more so not what I prefer. You play Madden or college football nowadays, and you'll get a phantom PI call on a defender you weren't even controlling, or a holding call on the opposite side of the line from where you were running. Sure, that happens in real life, but
I didn't do fucking shit!
On the other hand, a game like NBA Street leans into the absurd instead of the realistic. I love that, and the absurd is what I look for in video games. Gaming is a medium with infinite possibilities, so why limit ourselves to the finite possibilities of the flesh prisons we exist in? Has Keith Van Horn ever posterized Ben Wallace? Probably not, but he just did in NBA Street. Also, much love for the soundtrack in NBA Street Volume 2 for fitting the vibe perfectly. I mentioned earlier that the NBA Street games were the second coming of NBA Jam. Well, it just so happens that the developer of NBA Jam is the second star of today's show. That developer is Midway Games. What we lack today is the arcade sports experience, and Midway was one of the kings of the arcade back in the day. They brought games like Pac-Man and Space Invaders to the US. They also developed the original Mortal Kombat, Rampage, and this beauty. If you go to a barcade in the hipster neighborhood of your local city, you are sure to see Midway's name. Midway, as it pertains to this conversation of PS2 sports games, brought us the MLB Slugfest games, as well as Blitz and Hitz, which you may find at your local Blips and Chits. These games all took cues from their forefather, NBA Jam, with the ability for players to be on fire, and kept the arcade spirit alive. These games are such a blast to go back to today as they resemble modern sports games, but quickly lean far into the absurd. Starting off with MLB Slugfest, I gotta say my heroes growing up were Mark McGwire, Jimmy Rollins, and Gohan. So safe to say my childhood was ruined when I found out Mark McGwire was a cheater and Gohan peaked in elementary school. You're gonna tell me I can't go from this to this without cheating? Thank you, J-Roll, for being my only good role model. But MLB Slugfest taught me a lesson that the MLB Hall of Fame should learn. Maybe it's okay if we don't play by the rules. What if I could just punch the ball out of the first baseman's hands and start running for second? What if I ran straight through a third baseman's face to make it to third safely? Alright, I don't want to send the wrong message to the little ones out there. You should play by the rules, but you should also think outside the box and make sure you're having fun. MLB Slugfest is ridiculously fun. Greg Maddux was mowing my lineup down as he does, but luckily the game has an option for me to Billy Bean him with the ball. This can also be done strategically, hitting a good batter in his upper body to lower his batting stats, or hit him in the legs to lower his speed. Batters come up to the plate with the silliest walk-ups. After striking out, you may dog walk your way back to the dugout. And after smoking a piss missile to the bleachers, the opposing team literally cries on the ground like babies. It's hilarious. It can get so absurd, I hit a walk-off dinger with Pat Burrell, and he literally pointed and laughed at the other team before smacking his ass. I could actually see Pat the Bat doing this back in his heyday, so this really isn't too ridiculous now that I think of it. Also, why not have babes in the loading screens? Pat Burrell would love this game. NFL Blitz is in the same vein as MLB Slugfest, with you being able to pile drive guys who are defenseless on the ground. And it also cuts out the boring stuff, like in NFL Street. In NFL Street, instead of kicking for a point after attempt, you have to score in a close yardage situation. Or you can decide to push the line of scrimmage further back to go for two. And then in NFL Blitz, if you want to kick a PAT, it's just automatically made, and it cuts right to the other team returning the kickoff, as to not waste any of your precious time. Of these Midway sports games, the one I've played the most by far is NHL Hitz. Growing up, I played NHL Hitz 2002 religiously. Yeah, the one with scumbag Scott Stevens on the cover. Ever since, I can't hear Rollin by Limp Bizkit without thinking of NHL Hitz. For the footage for this video, I decided to check out NHL Hitz 2003 instead, which sadly does not open up with Limp Bizkit, but Powerman 5000 is the most fitting consolation prize I can think of. NHL Hitz is a blast, just like the other Midway games, and it leans into the absurd in its own way. The creative team logos are incredible, the dung beetle pushing a hockey puck caught my eye, and I was tempted to go with the Super Chimps logo, but ended up going with the wood guy from Tekken. You can pick a funny name for the announcer to call out for all of your players, you can give them ridiculous body proportions, and yeah, one of my players is a shark. He's not just a shark, he's a great teammate and a great player. Please show respect for Chainsaw! If you want to play a minigame, you have to decide if you want to be a pirate or a clown, or maybe a devil. Just not Scott Stevens, fuck that guy. The game is so silly but enjoyable, and has all of the absurd action you could hope for, like your whole team igniting at once from lightning bolts, checking players through the glass, knocking goalies unconscious with a slap shot, and goalie fights. Roberto Luongo beat my ass. I gotta get better at scrapping. There is over-the-top gameplay, but also great ideas, like face-offs being a battle of rock, paper, scissors, which sounds dumbed down, but is actually great, especially with your ability to fake out the other player with a pump-fake rock before you actually throw scissors. Also, after every game, they throw an NHL trivia question at you, which is just an awesome feature that I think should be in every sports game. These Midway sports games are a great time, and I think have actually aged well with how they deliver the experience that the modern sports games are lacking.
It's a home run! And Abreu puts his team up by 2.
I have one final game to talk about that some may argue isn't a sports game since racing is its own genre, but racing is also a sport, so we're going to talk about Burnout 3 Takedown. I know I said Mario Kart isn't a sports game earlier, but this is a show where everything's made up and the points don't matter. I love racing games, but going along with the theme of this video, I don't care for the Gran Turismos and Forza Horizons. Racing is exciting, but you know what's more exciting? Racing while the other cars are trying to kill you. The concept of this game is so genius, adding another layer to the racing experience with you not only trying to pass the other cars, but also position yourself to not get taken down. And I love how the AI isn't just along for the ride with you bullying them, they're really trying to kill you. It's great. You're also incentivized to attack other cars to fill up your boost meter, and incentivized to drive dangerously, with that boost meter also filling up by you driving into oncoming traffic and having near misses with pedestrian vehicles. This game is brilliantly designed to encourage and reward adrenaline-pumping gameplay decisions. And even without the takedown side to it, I think the racing gameplay feels great for a racing simpleton like myself with the drifting and boost mechanic. The game is also a complete package. You jump around the globe and have a large amount of different cars to race with that range from Formula 1 to Dominic Toretto. Along with the selection of cars, there's a good amount of different events to keep the gameplay varied. Sometimes you're racing other cars, sometimes you're racing the clock, sometimes you're just trying to take down as many cars as possible, and sometimes you're trying to unleash as much havoc as possible on these poor commuters. There's also a ton of events in total. I put a good amount of hours into this playthrough, and I'm not even halfway through all of the events. I get stupid pleasure out of seeing how far cars go flying after a crash, even when it's at my own expense. The aftertouch feature where you can move your car in slow motion after you crash is also a good addition in this game. It's not one I frequently use since my dopamine receptors usually want me to get back to racing as soon as possible, but it's satisfying when you pull it off. Burnout 3 I would say is my second favorite racing game of all time, behind only Need for Speed Hot Pursuit on the 360. Because the only thing better than crashing cars is outrunning cops with James Bond gadgets. And that's going to do it for this stroll down memory lane. If there's one message I want to have resonate from this video, it's that video games are supposed to be enjoyed. They aren't supposed to be a chore. Video games are also an escape from reality for many people. If your ideal escape from reality is you playing in the NBA in the most realistic way possible, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me personally, I like to play a lot of different games, and to get any sort of rewarding experience out of modern sports games, it requires more time than I'm willing to spend. And that's not how it always was. And that is why I believe that